Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Furthermore, based on the calculations of Qin Mu and the rest, the astronomical phenomenons were all fake, and that included the sun and the moon. They were all painted on the sky. It was impossible for anyone to leave, so how could they build a teleportation door on the sun and the moon? He wanted to dismantle the jade eyes to look at their structure, but he didn't dare to do so. Finally, the energy had finished gathering in Moon Jade Eye. Qin Mu controlled it, and the pupil shot out a beam of light that was as straight as a thin blade. Dragon-rearing sovereign had almost pulled himself out, so when the blade of light sliced through his neck, there was nothing strange. Yet there was a side effect. Wherever it passed, an incomparably thin sheet of ice would form. The ice covering was so long that its end could not be seen, and it had separated the bottom of surging river. There were quite a lot of fish and water monsters swimming in the river when one huge fish was sliced apart by the ice wall that had no thickness. However, that fish monster seemed to not have felt it and continued to swim. Yet its body separated from the center, and it became two pieces of swimming fish. There was no fresh blood leaking out, and Qin Mu could even clearly see the beast's organs and brain tissue. Two halves of the fish monster swam to and fro, not knowing that they had already been sliced in half. Qin Mu was stunned, not understanding what had happened. Could this Moon Jade Eye have no power, just able to slice people apart? Why are they not dead after being cut in half? He was puzzled. Could the injuries of the fish monster be frozen so that's why no blood flowed out? However, the area that froze has to be very thin, otherwise, the fish wouldn't be able to move. Suddenly, blood started to flow out of the two halves of the fish monster. The frozen wounds had to have melted, for the water started to reek of blood. Soon, the fish monster that was in two halves was devoured by others until only its bones were left. Dragon-rearing sovereign who was casting his skin off had long stopped squirming. He remained motionless, only his eyeballs rolling around. He saw the state of the fish monster and his blood ran cold. Qin Mu adjusted the jade eye and sliced another fish monster through the center. It was also cut in half. Qin Mu's vital qi surged out and swept the two halves of the fish monster over, and he pieced them together. The fish monster connected and swam away. Qin Mu was stunned, then became overjoyed. There's still such an effective Moon Jade Eye? Dragon-rearing sovereign's eyeballs rolled around disorderly, his body behind the neck not crawling forward, it was crawling back instead. He tried to shed off the two layers of skin like that. Dragon sovereign, don't move. Qin Mu raised the jade eye up and circled it around his neck. Dragon-rearing sovereign remained motionless, his dragon eyes filled with fear. A white line that went around his neck took shape. Qin Mu tried to push at the neck, but it was completely unmovable, so he took out a huge iron hammer and smashed it along the white line. Catcher! A crisp sound rang out, and dragon-rearing sovereign's scalp instantly turned numb. He croaked, "Hold it!" Qin Mu raised his huge hammer again and smashed it down heavily. Another crack rang out, and dragon-rearing sovereign shouted himself hoarse. "Hold it, I have something to say." Qin Mu stopped and asked curiously, "What does Dragon Sovereign want to say? What's the benefit in killing me?" Dragon-rearing sovereign said carefully to prevent his neck from being broken by the tremors. "Even if you kill me, you will still attract the revenge of high heavens. There will be stronger gods than me that will descend. They will find you, kill you, and change the path of surging river to make eternal peace another great ruins." Qin Mu swung his hammer down and said, "Different situations call for different actions, I will just have to kill them first." "Hold it. We, high heavens, are just watchdogs. If a god dies, it's fine, but if two gods will die, the true gods will be alarmed. The consequences of that will be the wiping out of the world." Dragon-rearing sovereign stated, "I have no grudge with you and have only come down because of an order, so why must we pit ourselves against each other until one of us dies?" Qin Mu stopped and smiled. "How is the extermination of eternal peace related to me? I'm from great ruins, so if eternal peace becomes another great ruins, I will feel freer instead." Moreover, if I let you off, what if you still want to kill me? You won't speak good of eternal peace after you return to high heaven, so why should I leave you alive? Dragon-rearing sovereign's face flickered between darkness and clarity. He then gritted his teeth and said, I can make an oath to Earth count. After you let me go, I will definitely not take revenge on you. Qin Mu raised his huge hammer. If it's just not taking revenge, you won't be able to take revenge after I kill you as well. Dragon-rearing sovereign's voice trembled. Hold it. I can teach you how to collect dragon veins and mobilize the true power of the true Dragon Lord. Qin Mu put down his iron hammer, his gaze sparkling. What else? The muscles on dragon-rearing sovereign's face twitched, but he still said, I can guard surging river's dragon vein and work for you. Qin Mu's face was solemn. Swear to Earth count. Dragon-rearing sovereigns gritted his teeth. I'll swear an oath to Earth count. Qin Mu smiled and put away his iron hammer, but still held onto Moon Jade Eye. He transformed into Saturn Sovereign that had a human head and a snake's body. Behind him appeared the Gate of Heaven Influence. The two doors opened up and revealed the sinister darkness of Yudu. You can now make an oath to Earth count, but don't play any tricks. I've already made an oath to Earth count once, so even if you'll try to play any tricks, you won't be able to trick an honest man like me, Qin Mu said solemnly. Honest man. The corner of dragon-rearing sovereign's eyes twitched, but he could only make an oath. He recited the oath about guarding surging river and not rebelling word for word. At that time, his true form revealed itself, and his body swelled up to transform into a huge flood dragon that was 300 yards long. Black chi surrounded his body and transformed into chains. One end was connected to surging river and the other to his soul. If he went back on his oath, that chain would pull his soul into Yudu and he would die. Qin Mu carefully studied the words in his oath to check that there were no loopholes. He then smiled and said, when the ice line around your neck melts, your body will still be complete. Call back your divine flood dragon king and guard surging river properly. The huge flood dragon that was dragon-rearing sovereign had a huge head like a mountain. He looked at Qin Mu with a complicated expression. I keep calling you an honest-looking boy, but that's not your name. May I ask who you are? Qin Mu took the dark green flood dragon to the river surface with him, and his voice came from above, somewhat distorted by the water. Qin Mu of Disabled Elderly Village, Heavenly Devil Cult Master, the current human emperor. Dragon-rearing sovereign was stunned, then asked in a low voice, so it's human emperor. Who taught you like that? You are way harder to deal with than the sword god back then. While Qin Mu rose from the water, a huge flood dragon swam past him, diving into the depths. It was none other than the divine flood dragon king. Qin Mu stopped, noticing a bamboo stick stuck in the forehead of the sapphire blue flood dragon. It was bubbling with blood. Grandpa Blind's bamboo cane. Qin Mu rose from the river and walked toward the shore. The dragon Qilin brought over a dozen flood dragons while carrying Ling Yuxiu, Hu Linga, and Sai Yunxiang carefully. The battle between Blind and the divine flood dragon king had to have just ended. They had avoided the aftermath of the fight, so they were slightly slow to get close. Hu Linga had finally sobered up and was looking around curiously. She didn't know how she had ended up there from the banquet in town, so she was very puzzled. Qin Mu looked around and saw Blind. At that moment, he looked very miserable, all covered in mud. His clothes were disheveled, and there were wounds all over his body. It was evident that he'd faced an extremely tough battle with the divine flood dragon king. That creature was extremely strong. It was a flood dragon that had become a god after all. It possessed remarkable abilities, and it was also a water attribute flood dragon. Blind had used all his power and made life difficult for the divine flood dragon king, but he'd gotten injured as well. The dragon Qilin flew over and landed on the ground. Hu Linga jumped down from his back, still in the form of a small fox. She skipped and jumped onto Qin Mu's shoulder, and only then noticed the dark green flood dragon on the other shoulder, which caused her hair to stand on ends. Even her tail became straight. When she got drunk, she would return back to her true form. And upon waking up, she forgot to transform back into a human as well. Linga, don't be scared, this is a flood dragon I just recruited. It has even done a huge credit. Qin Mu consoled the little fox while taking a glance at Blind. He blinked and beamed at him. Sister Yushio, Saint Xiong, let me show you a big fella. The two girls were very curious and asked, what big fella? Qin Mu stood beside the river and shouted loudly, River Suppression Dragon King, aren't you coming out? Waves surged forward and overflowed into the sky. The huge dragon that was dragon-rearing sovereign raised its head from the river, tall as a mountain. His long whiskers hung by his nose, sparkling and translucent, fluttering in the wind. They were 300 yards long and beautiful. Dragon-rearing sovereign hung his head down. Does your majesty have any instructions? The two women were stunned, and Blind was also astonished. Qin Mu was pleased with himself as he looked around. When he saw everyone's expression, he crossed his arms over his chest. He smiled and said, nothing much, I just wanted you to come out and meet everyone. With a solemn face, dragon-rearing sovereign endured the urge to slap the little thing with one palm. As he was about to sink back into the water, Qin Mu said, hold on, don't be in a hurry to leave. You had promised to teach me how to collect dragon veins and how to mobilize the power of the true Dragon Lord. Dragon-rearing sovereign immediately stopped, no longer sinking into the water. Qin Mu proudly looked over. Grandpa Blind, how's that? Beyond awesome. Blind was full of smiles. Qin Mu's gaze flickered, and he secretly took out a golden flute. He then executed secrets of dragon control so numerous flood dragons flew toward Blind. They were all extremely powerful, and if they tied Blind up, he would definitely be unable to move. But at that moment, Blind suddenly flicked his finger, and Qin Mu gave a grunt. The three great divine treasures in his body were sealed up once again. The sound of the flute stopped, and the flood dragons looked around in a daze. They didn't attack Blind. Mua, you're being too awesome for your own good. Blind gave another flick, and golden rope flew out to tie his arms and legs. He sighed. Each age brings forth a new genius on this noble land, yet the younger generations always die on the sandy beach. The ginger gets spicier as it gets older. You were too slow in making your move, trying to control the flood dragons to tie me up. It's not that simple. Qin Mu fell to the ground, his face black like charcoal. Just as he wanted to order dragon-rearing sovereign to take Blind down, his mouth was stuffed with a piece of cloth, making him unable to talk. The wedding has to continue, and the child has to be born. Blind picked him up and said to dragon-rearing sovereign, ferry us back to Great Ruins by following the river. We will go back to the village to continue the wedding. There are still 2 brides, and if you organize it nicely, I'll treat you to the wedding banquet. Dragon-rearing sovereign hesitated for a moment while looking at Qin Mu. Muffled cries came from the youth's mouth as he tried to struggle. However, after a moment, the boy just nodded in submission. Dragon-rearing sovereign secretly felt happy. This honest-looking boy is so crafty, yet there's a time when he's at a disadvantage too. Serves him right. He bent down, presenting him his long back. It was like a narrow island on the water. Come onto my back, he shouted. Blind carried Qin Mu onto the dragon's back, and the dragon Qilin hurriedly came over as well. Numerous flood dragons that were bustling with activity squeezed into a ball too. These are the flood dragons I raised, they are all freeloaders. Dragon-rearing sovereign felt another pang of pain, but the incident was already beyond any salvaging. If he could redo everything, he would send a fatal blow to Qin Mu the first time he met him, killing the honest virgin boy with a slap. On the dragon's back, Qin Mu seemed to have already accepted his fate and didn't struggle anymore. He also didn't try to make dragon-rearing sovereign make a move. Thus, Blind took out the cloth in his mouth and said, have the ill sovereign teach you. Qin Mu stretched out his hands, and Blind took off the golden rope. However, the portion on his legs remained. Qin Mu's gaze wavered. Why is Grandpa Blind so careful? I'm just learning how to collect dragon veins from dragon-rearing sovereign and need magic power for that. Besides, the flood dragons are already hungry, so I need to refine pills to feed them. Can I run away if you undo the seals on me? Even if I want to run, can I escape Grandpa Blind's grasp? Isn't sealing me just as easy as flicking a finger for you? Blind raised his eyebrows and stretched his hand to tap on the heart of his brows. Qin Mu was delighted as he heard a rumble. His spirit embryo divine treasure was opened, but his 5 elements and 6 directions divine treasures were still sealed. The vital chi in spirit embryo divine treasure is enough for you to learn, Blind said calmly. Qin Mu sighed with admiration and gave Blind a thumbs up. As expected, the old and experienced that taught me how to be an adult, always being so careful. Blind's heart burst with joy and he laughed. Stop flattering me. Go, go. Ling Yuxiao and Sai Yunxiang looked at each other in dismay. The teachings in Cowherd Boy's family seemed to be different from the other families. No matter how they saw it, it looked like they were bringing their child to walk an unorthodox path. Qin Mu refined spirit pills and fed the dragons. The dragon Qilin also ate a few mouthfuls, but felt that the taste was wrong. He secretly peeled a scarlet fire spirit pill open, and his face couldn't help turning black. He saw that there was a fire element divine vitality pill in the center of scarlet fire spirit pill. No wonder it was somewhat spicy. Cult Master, these spirit pills are wrong, the dragon Qilin shouted. After that, he peeled open a few more spirit pills and threw the fire element divine vitality pills into the river while eating just the skins. Qin Mu played the golden flute and had the green flood dragon beat the dragon Qilin up. The fatty yelped miserably and didn't dare to be picky anymore. As dragon rearing sovereign swam toward great ruins, he taught Qin Mu an even more profound secrets of dragon control. The dragon rearing scriptures he had given Qin Mu had still held some information back, numerous crucial points had not been recording in them. Qin Mu learned diligently and didn't play any tricks. After half a day, he had learned all of secrets of dragon control and asked on how to mobilize the power of the true Dragon Lord. Dragon rearing sovereign said, I have no idea who refined the true Dragon Lord into a treasure, but now it has already become a treasure of fate. It can never become a true dragon. However, placing it into the nest would allow it to absorb the dragon chi there. With a unique technique to absorb the fate of the true Dragon Lord, the cultivation of the person wearing the true Dragon Lord will grow by leaps and bounds. I have never learned this kind of technique before, but I think that the person who wanted to collect the treasure should have imprinted the technique into the true Dragon Lord. After seizing the fate, you will become the true Dragon Lord. A unique technique. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. He immediately mentioned the 9 Dragons Monarch technique he had learned from Emperor Yang Feng. Is this kind of technique one to seize fate? Dragon rearing sovereign pondered it for a moment, then shook his head. This kind of technique can only seize the chi, borrowing the dragon chi to cultivate, so it isn't a technique to seize fate. We, the dragon race, are born from heaven and earth and naturally inherit the knowledge of the cosmos, changing it into a language known as the dragon language. Every dragon is naturally proficient in the dragon language, so there's no need to learn it. The writings and runes on the true Dragon Lord and its nest are nothing else but the writings of my dragon race. I only saw the ones on the nest, but from the writings there's indeed a technique that seizes fate written down there. However, it isn't complete. Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly. He should only be able to learn the complete technique to seize fate after putting the Emperor's Disc and the true dragon's nest together. Legend said that a god had conferred Emperor's Disc to the ancestors of Ling family, and that it symbolized the authority of the Emperor. The 9 Dragons Monarch technique was then naturally a technique that was comprehended from the Emperor's Disc. On top of that, a genius like Emperor Yang Feng had been able to perfect 9 Dragons Monarch technique and raise it to a level where it could compete with great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures and Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. One could well imagine how terrifying would be the technique that combined the writings on the Emperor's Disc with those on the nest. Dragon Sovereign, teach me the dragon language. Qin Mu said suddenly. Dragon Rearing Sovereign taught him the dragon language he knew and said, it is actually hidden within the bloodline. The purer the bloodline, the more dragon words one would know. I'm not a true dragon, so there are still some parts that I don't know the meaning of. Qin Mu memorized all the syllables and writings of the dragon language, and his head started to swell. The strokes of the dragon language were strange, and they looked like they were formed by dragons. There was no regular pattern to be seen. Without it, it would be impossible to deduce the meaning of the characters he didn't recognize. Besides that, the method of pronunciation was also different from the human language. They had unusual cadences, and some syllables couldn't be pronounced with the human throat. It was nearly an impossible task for him to want to use the dragon language to converse with dragons. Qin Mu memorized the dragon language as much as he could, then took out the emperor's disc that was hanging around his neck. Looking at it, he was instantly able to understand the meaning of some of the characters and the runes. However, since dragon-rearing sovereign didn't know the whole language, Qin Mu couldn't recognize all that was written. The writings on the emperor's disc changed continuously and made him giddy from reading them. Qin Mu closed his eyes and shook his head. He said in a low voice, "Only true dragons will recognize all of the writings of the dragon race, so where can I find a true dragon and ask him to teach me all of the dragon language?" "There are true dragons in great ruins," dragon-rearing sovereign said. Qin Mu's spirit was greatly aroused. He suddenly raised his head to look forward and saw secret waters pass ahead of them. Dragon-rearing sovereign's speed was truly astounding. In just half a day, he had brought them to great ruins. Secret Waters Pass was blockaded by the army of Eternal Peace Empire. If dragon-rearing sovereign wanted to cross, he had to destroy the whole city. Qin Mu immediately had him stop, and everyone jumped off his back and entered Secret Waters Pass. Feng Xiuyuan led many people over to welcome Qin Mu and bowed in greeting. "We pay our respects to Cult Master." Qin Mu smiled and said, "Spare the formalities. It's getting late, so we shall take a rest here before entering Great Ruins tomorrow. Incense Master Feng, please arrange the guest rooms." Blind beamed and said, "This girl doesn't look bad, prepare a banquet. It's the second blooming of your cult master tonight, he will get married." The whole secret water pass was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. Feng Xiuyuan was swift in handling matters, and soon Cai Yunxiang was dressed nicely by a bunch of female soldiers. She wore a phoenix coronet and veil while Qin Mu wore the big red silk ball again. He was forced to bow and get married with Cai Yunxiang. Little girl Feng is also not bad, she's quick in handling matters, saving me the trouble. Blind couldn't keep his mouth closed from smiling. He thought to himself, I wonder if she's married. At the wedding banquet, the little girl Hulinga tears looked like raindrops on a pear blossom. She hugged her wine jar, unable to even stand straight, crying that Grandpa Blind had lied to him, that he was an old trickster. Numerous soldiers of Secret Waters Pass that had come forth to congratulate the couple looked at one another in dismay as they didn't know why was the 6 to 7-year-old girl whimpering so sorrowfully. After all the joyous activities, the newly wedded couple was sent to the bridal room. Cai Yunxiang secretly had hidden a dagger on her body for the time Qin Mu lifted her veil. That would be the moment for her to strike and fulfill her long-cherished wish as the Saintess, to assassinate the licentious and tyrannical cult master. After waiting for quite a while, Qin Mu hadn't yet come to her, and a pang of jealousy welled up in her heart. Am I inferior to that fat girl, Ling Yuxiu? Grandpa Blind is blind, but his heart isn't blind, yet someone's eyes and heart are both blind. Does he only like girls with big chests? She waited for a while more, but Qin Mu still didn't come to sit beside her nor lifted her veil. She secretly raised the veil and saw that Qin Mu was sitting beside the table and studying a book diligently. Cai Yunxiang was bitter and angry. On the night of a wedding with a beauty that looked as lovely as a flower, the fool was studying. It was truly outrageous. Cai Yunxiang lifted her veil and tossed it aside. She walked forward and smiled. What is Cult Master so engrossed in? Computational canon of mysterious lady. Qin Mu raised his head and invited her to take a seat. He said sincerely, Grandpa Blind always liked to play a fool, so sorry for implicating you to marry me. I know he is worried about my safety and wants me to marry a nice girl and give birth to babies so I would be tied down by a wife and unable to return to eternal peace. He simply doesn't want me to face the dangers in the future. Sister Xiong, allow me to apologize to you for making you suffer along the way. When he finished saying that, he stood up and bowed. Cai Yunxiang immediately returned his greeting and said firmly, You have always treated us courteously and didn't take advantage of me nor the princess. I have seen all that, so I naturally know Cult Master's conduct. You are the cult master and half a seniority higher than me, so there's no need for the formalities. She was even younger than Qin Mu, only a girl that was 14 years old who had bright eyes and white teeth. The way Cai Yinxiang conducted herself always seemed trifling and disrespectful, but when she was serious, she had a bearing that was kind of magnanimous and graceful. The saintess of the Cai family was the alternative choice for the cult master. If Heavenly Devil Cult Master were to unfortunately die, she would succeed in his place. Thus she naturally had an extraordinary bearing as well. Cult Master still hasn't said why you want to read Computational Canon of Mysterious Lady, she said while smiling. Qin Mu continued to study while saying, I want to escape Grandpa Blind's grasp, but I definitely can't outrun him. If I poison him, it won't be nice, he's my grandpa after all. That's why I've thought of using a teleportation divine art. Cai Yinxiang cried out in astonishment, Cult Master's attainments in algebra have already reached this step. Teleportation divine art was extremely hard to cultivate, and there were not many people who were able to succeed in it in Heavenly Devil Cult. All the Hall Masters used teleportation flags or teleportation clothes, since if they wanted to succeed in cultivating the teleportation divine art, they would need astonishing attainments in algebra. The difficulty in that divine art was no inferior to that of Dao Sword. To make use of teleportation divine art, the space algebra had to be cultivated to its extreme. Otherwise, a mistake in the calculation would send one to the wrong, dangerous place. But even scarier than that was sending oneself into a rock, one's body would then fuse with it. Yet the most terrifying point was still a different problem. With the teleportation divine art, a person could dissect oneself, leaving pieces in different spaces. The most difficult point of teleportation divine art was calculating the numerous points of teleportation in a split second without making a single mistake. Besides, one would need to continuously calculate while teleporting. The required calculations were so numerous that for them to all be accurate was something nearly impossible. In Heavenly Devil Cult's history, there were quite a few strong practitioners who had crippled, killed, or even went missing because of cultivating teleportation divine art. There were also many who had dissected themselves. What was even more terrifying was that those strong practitioners all had astounding attainments in algebra. Qin Mu studied computational canon and calculated continuously at the same time. He was trying to calculate all the space teleportation points. Dao Master Lin Xian gave me computational canon of Mysterious Lady a few months ago and I've been studying it since then. As for computational canon of Supreme Mystery, I've already mastered it. Dao Sect's attainments in algebra can be said to be number 1. With two kinds of computational canons together, I will be able to solve the marvel of teleportation divine art. Don't worry, I will be able to understand computational canon of Mysterious Lady by tonight. Once the darkness withdraws from Great Ruins tomorrow morning, I'll leave with this divine art. Once Grandpa Blind sees that I have left, he naturally won't trouble you girls. Cai Yinxiang's expression was complicated when she said gently, Why are you struggling? Even though Grandpa Blind kidnapped us by force and forced us to marry you, you are only thinking about yourself. Have you once asked if we are willing to marry you? Qin Mu stopped calculating and raised his head in astonishment. Under the light of the lamp, Saintess Xiong looked bashful and irresistible. Sister Xiong, are you willing to marry me? Qin Mu asked with his eyes wide open. Cai Yinxiang's eyes went down, and she lowered her head bashfully. The beads of the phoenix coronet swayed gently as candlelight reflected off them in a captivating glow. I don't believe. Qin Mu lowered his head down to continue reading the book diligently. There was a dagger hidden in your sleeve just now. If I go to your side, you will stab me, so I don't believe you. Cai Yinxiang formed into such tight fists that they crackled, and her teeth creaked from grinding. Suddenly, she pulled out a small dagger and pounced. Qin Mu laughed and rose up. He avoided the dagger and flicked his finger against the blade. Cai Yinxiang spun around him, and the red gown of the bride whirled like a red lotus. With cold light flashing in her hand, she attacked Qin Mu frantically. The noise of furniture being smashed came from the bridal room as numerous items were shattered into pieces. How bustling! Blind put down his wine cup, his ears twitching. As he sat calmly, he beamed at Feng Xiuyun who was drinking with him. General Feng, are you married? Qin Mu fought with Cai Yunxiang for a moment until he gained the upper hand. He then snatched her dagger and threw her onto the bed. There, he smacked her but a few times, taking revenge on her for cleaning out his small treasury before going back to studying diligently. Cai Yunxiang went under the blanket angrily, her back to him. The sky gradually turned bright while the world in great ruins was shrouded in incomparably dense darkness. Qin Mu had read the book for the whole night, but his vitality was still ample. Cai Yunxiang woke up. When she turned over to face Qin Mu, she couldn't help snorting. He turned his head to her and smiled. You snore when you sleep, but it isn't loud, just like the noise of a kitten. It should be something in your throat that's most likely left from qi deviation. I refined a pill for you, so consume it as soon as possible, and it'll be cured. Cai Yunxiang left the bed and stretched her body. She took the spirit pill. Qin Mu let out a shaky breath, and his gaze flickered. I can definitely escape this time. However, Grandpa Blind only unsealed my spirit embryo divine treasure, so my magic power is still not enough for me to teleport far away. Because of that, I need to use secrets of dragon control in dragon rearing scriptures to have the flood dragons coil around my body and lend me their magic power. Cai Yunxiang jumped in shock. You still want to leave? Qin Mu smiled and said, that is natural. Grandpa Blind thinks that I will die in eternal peace, so I want to prove it to him that I can escape from his hands and thus escape from the great disaster coming in the future. There is nobody in this world that can kill me. He was full of confidence when he pushed open the door. Cai Yunxiang walked out with him, only to see Blind standing at the arched doorway to the garden, seemingly smiling at them. Cai Yunxiang hurriedly looked at Qin Mu, whose face was also filled with smiles. Blind raised his eyebrows, having gotten a new bamboo cane from somewhere. He tapped it gently against the ground, then said, Mu, granddaughter-in-law, come and eat breakfast. Qin Mu smiled and said, just in time for breakfast. Cai Yunxiang kept feeling that there were sparks crackling non-stop between the two men. Blind clearly didn't have eyes, but she had a feeling that the two were staring at each other and silently competing. On the breakfast table, Ling Yuxiu also appeared as the first wife. The little girl who Ling sulked with her head lowered as she ate. Her displeasure was worn on her face, and her cheeks were puffed up. Nobody could say why exactly she was sulking. Fatty dragon, I'll beat you to death if you're picky. The little girl suddenly blew up at the dragon Qilin, scaring him into nearly flipping over his rice bowl. The small and delicate flood dragons were amused and cried out ma-ha ma-ha. The dragon Qilin smiled and said, Sister Linga, I'm not picky, look, I've already lost half a tail in weight. After breakfast, Blind revealed a smile and raised his eyebrows. He then said leisurely, Mu, great ruins is right ahead, so do whatever you want to do. Qin Mu's gaze flickered and he said, Grandpa Blind sealed my 5 elements and 6 directions divine treasures, so how would I dare to do anything? Blind yawned and stretched out his hand to tap him on the heart of his brows. Don't say I didn't give you any chance. 2 loud explosions came from his body, and his 5 elements and 6 directions divine treasures suddenly opened. His magic power flooded back, and he instantly felt power coursing through his body. Grandpa Blind is very confident, eh? Qin Mu narrowed his eyes, and his will to battle blazed. Blind propped himself on his bamboo cane and beamed at him. Not a problem, not a problem. Suddenly, Qin Mu gave a heavy stomp, and incomparably luxurious teleportation formations appeared around his body. They lit up, and his body instantly vanished. Teleportation divine art. He had just vanished when Blind suddenly tapped the ground with his bamboo cane. Qin Mu then fell off midair. The moment he did so, incomparably luxurious formation markings swirled around him again, and he vanished once more. Blind tossed the bamboo cane up, and as if it was a jade it changed in the sky like a green dragon. It tapped numerous times in space, and Qin Mu's teleportation divine art was intercepted again and again, forcing him to keep revealing his traces. Qin Mu's body flickered on and off as he was slowly forced back into the courtyard. Finally, he was forced out by Blind's bamboo cane and landed back into the courtyard. Before his feet could touch the ground, the sound of a flute rang out, and flood dragons pounced on Blind. In an instant, he was bound tightly by them. Blind paid no attention to them. His bamboo cane flew over and tapped gently on the necks of 2 of them. They instantly turned limp, as if they had died. There were also 2 flood dragons that had flown to Qin Mu's feet, and he instantly felt magic power flooding over. His palms then sliced down one after another. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless teleportation formation markings surged out crazily, appearing between him and Blind. The space between the 2 of them expanded rapidly, flashing with formation runes of all colors. Blind's expression changed slightly, and he gave chase with his bamboo cane. It tapped rapidly and destroyed the runes one after another. Suddenly, however, the formations in the surroundings swept toward Blind, who was in the center. He stopped and let them drown him out. There was a smile on his face. Mua, you have won. Swoosh. A ray of light flashed, and he was teleported away by the teleportation divine art. Outside Secret Water's pass, Blind walked out from a ray and looked back at the place. He was silent for a moment, then revealed a smile. You have grown up. This video will end here.